All right, here we go. Front sway bar install on my 2020 M340 G20 chassis. We've got our engine support all set up. Just had to remove the side cover pieces there and put some tension on the motor. So when we go to drop the subframe, it's supported. Then you've got to take off some of the under trays, just 10mm screws for the plastic one and 18mm bolts for the aluminum tray. And first thing is we have this coolant line that's connected to the subframe that needs to get disconnected. We'll also have to disconnect some of these wires here on the power steering motor. And so you can just take your pry tool and disconnect these plastic clips out of the subframe so that your coolant line is free. And there's one more line on the inside of the subframe right here to disconnect as well. And there's an AC line on the top of the subframe to disconnect also. For the power steering motor, there's two harnesses we need to disconnect, the one in the center and then the large one on the outside. I found it helpful to just use a screwdriver to help me pry out as I press the tabs in, and they came out pretty easy. Next, you need to remove this plastic panel on each side, 10mm screws on the bottom and a few in the wheel well. Now that we've gained access, we need to disconnect the front bumper bracket from the subframe with these two 13mm bolts. Access to the top bolt is pretty limited, and ultimately I ended up taking out the brake duct from the fender well, and that gave me much better access. And if anyone has the contact info for the BMW engineer that decided to put this anti-vibration bracket right above the coolant line, let me know. I'd like to send him some hate mail. This made this job that much harder just because the bolt is so long. It's an 18mm. Access is really tough, and the only reason you have to take it off is because it will break off your coolant line. Anyway, you can't get an 18mm on there. You just got to be really cautious of your coolant hose, and it's a long bolt, so it takes some patience to just throw it all the way out. Also really fun to try and get a torque wrench back on there to torque it when you put this all back together, so that's a challenge also. And while we're down here, we'll go ahead and take off this sway bar end link. It's just a T27 and 16mm wrench. And next you got to take off the motor mount covers, just 10mm screws, and also your inner fender well liner there, just a bunch of 10mm underneath and in the wheel well there. Just got to buzz all those off, and this is so we can get access to the subframe bolts. Next, you want to get at this steering rack bolt. It's an E10, and it's easy access. You can get to it, no problem at all. When I lowered the subframe, I didn't see the steering rack separate at all. I almost felt like I could have left this bolt in. But if you are going to disconnect this, it's a good idea to strap your steering wheel down in the center position before you do this so nothing else moves. You don't want to disconnect the steering rack bolt and then start twisting the wheel around or anything. You want to make sure everything stays aligned and oriented. And now we can finally remove the motor mount bolts. There's just 3 on each motor mount, and I believe these are E12 or E13. And now go ahead and support your front subframe. And now we can start removing the subframe bolts. There's 6 of them. The 2 in the rear are the ones you're going to start with, and they are 21mm. And we're going to take these all the way out and then re-thread them in just a few turns because we aren't actually going to fully remove these. The front 4 we will remove completely. The other 4 subframe bolts are 18mm, and again, we take these ones all the way out on both sides. And I started to lower the subframe a little bit at this point. You can see kind of the gap we've got in between the subframe and the body. The rear bolt is still holding the subframe in on that end. And, we got a few inches to work with here and take off the sway bar. And remove your sway bar bracket. I think these are 13mm. And now you can start wrestling your sway bar out. There's really no specific trick to this. You just kind of got to work at it from both sides underneath the car. Make sure it's not hanging up on any of your coolant lines or wiring harnesses, anything like that. But, you know, it comes out easy enough, I guess. And at this point, you're ready to just reinstall everything. Twist the new sway bar in so you can get it all the way to the other side to attach your end links and everything. Bolt everything back down, check your torque specs, and enjoy the upgrade.